Europa, som vi kender det, vil forsvinde i løbet af det næste halve århundrede. Millioner af muslimske indvandrere og deres efterkommere vil ganske enkelt overtage stort set hele kontinentet. Den her dystre forudsigelse kommer fra Mark Steyn, kanadisk forfatter, journalist og debattør. I dag var han i København for at få trykkefrihedsselskabet Sacco-pris for sine ytringer, som for eksempel her på det amerikanske Fox TV i 2007, hvor han havde det her bud på udviklingen i europæiske lande som Storbritannien og Frankrig.
In 10 years' time, you will have essentially these countries with a semi-Muslim political character. If you'd said on September the 10th, 2001, if you'd said to most journalists that the relationship between the state and its Muslim community would be the principal domestic political dynamic in Britain and France and Scandinavia and the Netherlands and Germany, people would have thought you were nuts. But in 5 years, we've grown to accept that. Pitch it down the road another 5 or 10 years, you'll have Muslim political blocs in Parliament, and the Muslim vote will be more significant than the black vote is in this country.
Trykkefrihedsselskabet Sacco-pris gives for at forene journalistisk dygtighed med uforfærdighed og kompromisløshed. Prisen er tidligere givet til blandt andre Jyllandspostens kulturredaktør Flemming Rose og til Mohammed-tegner Kurt Vestergaard. Now, welcome, Mark Steyn. First of all, I'll congratulate you with the prize you have received today. And then let us stick straight to your prediction. Europe is going to disappear. Why is that?
I think Europe, as we've known it since the end of the Second World War, social democratic, multicultural Europe is going to disappear, and it's going to be replaced by something else. We've had sweeping demographic transformation in Europe.
And something else? What is that?
Well, I think the great question over Europe is whether Europe will be the same when it has an entirely different population. I mean, for example, if you look at Malmo, since it became Islamized, you have Jews leaving Malmo. Sweden is supposedly one of the most tolerant countries in Europe, yet in a major Swedish city, Jews feel that Malmo, in a sense, has gone past tolerant multicultural Sweden and become something else.
You use the phrase Malmö has been Islamized?
Yes, I think.
From where do you see that?
Well, I think you can that at a certain point, when you are not engaging in population evolution, you're engaging in population transformation. If you take, say, Bradford in Yorkshire, 75% of Pakistani Britons in Bradford are married to their first cousins. If you had made that prediction 40 years ago, when Muslims began moving to Yorkshire in England, people would have thought you were insane.
But how can you know that this will happen all over Europe?
Well, I don't think you can. All I'm saying is I think there's a question mark over what Europe will be. Now, there's places in Europe that have very little Muslim immigration, so Islam isn't part of the equation. Greece, for example, doesn't really have a significant Muslim population, but it's just insolvent because the social democratic model on which most European states are developed since the war is unsustainable. So Greece is going broke, but in countries like Germany or France, you see that a successor population, which is these young Muslims, is already in place.
But in some countries, in Denmark, for example, and other countries, you recently have seen that Muslims are having fewer and fewer babies. And with these statistics in mind, what does that do to your conclusions?
Well, I don't think it does. I don't think it does anything, because I think the demographic energy only has to exist for a couple of generations. I mean, for example, if you have 90% of the population who have 1.3 or 1.4 children, which is the European average, and you have 10% who have 3.5, which is supposedly the European Muslim average, you only need 2 generations to catch up. In other words, the 90% and the 10% will have pretty much the same number of grandchildren. But beyond that...
But if it goes down, actually, then what will happen then?
Well, I think at that point you will be seeing, which we're already seeing in Brussels, already seeing in Rotterdam, already seeing in many many cities, you will be seeing them take on a semi-Muslim political character.
So you don't, just to understand, you don't think that the lower birth rates will change your predictions?
No, I think in the end we're past. I think in most French cities, for example, we're past the point of no return. I think in significant other parts, I think in Brussels, I think in Amsterdam, we're past the point of no return. So the question then is not whether these jurisdictions will be Muslim in character, but what kind of Muslim jurisdictions they'll be.
On the other hand, some might say that the native Europeans, they're having too few babies, so why not be happy that someone would help us to get enough babies to keep the welfare state sustainable and so on?
Well, I don't think it works out like that, for example, because if you take Turkish Muslims in Germany, generally speaking, they retire at an earlier age than ethnic Germans. 40% of French imams are on the dole. So in a sense, they've got nothing to do but sit around all day being subsidized by the state. So that model doesn't work, because immigrants understand very quickly how to figure out the system. You go to almost any part of Europe, and the idea that importing large numbers of immigrants will save you from your own demographic decline won't do it.
But what you're saying here, that shows that there is a potential for changing these things. I mean, there is a potential maybe for doing the integration better all over Europe. What would that change?
Well, I think at a certain point it goes beyond assimilation, but I think it's, yes, you should have certain integration and assimilation policies, but you have to have something to assimilate to. And it's not clear to me, for example, that if you were a Turkish Muslim living in a German city, what is there to assimilate to? What is there about contemporary German
you don't believe
nation?
in integration?
Well, no, that's not the point. I'm saying you have to have something to integrate with. In other words, German culture or Danish culture or Dutch culture has to be sufficiently confident that immigrants want to be a part of it. If you go to an English school, English Muslims are told that Britain was the font of imperialism, of racism, of colonialism, of everything bad in the world. And then they're surprised that British Muslims are turning up in Afghanistan fighting for the Taliban. Why would you love your own country if you're told it's the source of evil in the world?
But all this, Mark Steyn, raises the question, why isn't the European culture strong enough to defend this?
Because I think since the Second World War and even since the First World War, European elites have not believed in themselves or their own people. I think European elites drew the wrong conclusion at the end of the Second World War. When they said never again on the German death camps, they didn't really mean never again to standing up to intolerance, and they drew the wrong conclusion. They thought it meant rejecting nationalism, rejecting national identity, rejecting your cultural inheritance. And there's a huge hole in the heart of where European identity ought to be.
But you don't see any signs of this going to be changed?
Well, I see hope. I see signs of pushback, but I think the kind of pushback you're seeing with France banning the burqa or Switzerland banning minarets, I think in a sense puts Europe on a course for very profound bicultural clashes over the next few years that I think are going to be very uncomfortable.
And that might even deepen the conflict.
Yes, I think you're right. You're absolutely right there. I think the conflict is going to get worse before it gets better.
Mark Steyn, thank you very much for sharing your views with us here at Deadline. Og så kan jeg lige føje til, at med Sappho-prisen til Mark Steyn i dag fulgte 20.000 kroner plus en skulptur af digterinden Sappho, som ifølge Trykkefrihedsselskabet er symbolet på ukonventionel frihedstrang og menneskeligt ligeværd.